Hello, welcome back to another episode of Jorgy Stripping the Dipping. This is actually your host, Jorgina Donna. Unfortunately, your usual co-host, Denzel, is not here today. So let's get back to the episode because I have a very special guest today. The only time we were getting excited about DRS was whenever a driver gets close to the DRS zone, especially when it's a close game. During Imola, almost everyone was dying for it to be enabled, by the way. Um, that was because the only DRS zone most of us knew was the drag reduction system until this guy right here came up with a podcast named DRS Zone. Yes, if you guessed it, you might have guessed it very well. Today we had the opportunity to have the man himself behind the DRS Zone, RJ. Welcome to the show, man.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. That was quite the intro there. I loved it.
Well, I have to give the proper intro for the proper man, right?
Yeah, trying, but no, that was awesome.
So, unfortunately, with the timings and schedules, Denzel is currently running the Dreamland business, probably snoozing by now, as I mentioned earlier. So,
Yeah.
instead, I'm replacing the celebrity dance today. So I won't be for you guys and for you as well, RJ, because Dance, I know he's hyped up the episode because.
Oh yeah, definitely. He's the best hype man I've never met in real life.
All right, so let's get back to the episode then. The first question, as usual, the whole typical question. Please give us an introduction about yourself for our listeners.
Yeah. Yeah, so my name's RJ. My real name I should say is Rhett Jackson. I was actually born. My name was actually based off of a book, Gone with the Wind. My mom had it
Really?
actually while I was in labor, so it's kind of a random fact. But my friends who know me call me RJ, even go. So I go by RJ. Uh, Before I get into the DRS zone stuff, I'm from Michigan. If you actually put your hand out in front of you, your right hand, kind of where just about pretty much halfway between your pinky and your palm. If you put your finger there and then move in maybe about an inch, that's where I'm from in Michigan, Grand Rapids. So kind of a weird visual, but everyone from Michigan, where I'm from, uses their hand to describe where we are for the most part, which is kind of a Michigan thing, but it's pretty cool actually when you describe it to other people. It's kind of
I was
cringy
like,
at some
I,
points
I
in
was
life, but I
actually, I
like
was
it.
like thinking, okay, where is he going with this finger mapping? And then,
Yeah, it's
oh, that
kind of
was
random.
cool.
Maybe people in the States, maybe, I don't know, appreciate it more. But anyways, yeah. So uh, I'm a practicing dentist right now. I graduated from Michigan in 2020, kind of during the pandemic, and that's when I really got into Formula One while I was in grad school. It was the same season that Drive to Survive actually first aired. That same season that it was based on, I should say. And I was coming out from a night out with some friends. Um, and I believe it was actually Baku was on. So it was a pretty late night, and that's how I originally got into Formula One. Came home late. Should have probably gone to bed and literally watched the entire race from start to finish. And that was my real first exposure to Formula One. And as time kind of went on, COVID struck more. I just kind of wanted to create a platform or something just to chat with others about Formula One about. So that's when I kind of came up with the DRS zone, daily racing stories, and go over, the factoids that maybe average fans wouldn't know. And this maybe a little more broken down into bite-sized pieces that make people appreciate the sport a little bit more. So, yeah.
That's RJ for you. All right.
Yeah, I
So,
know it was a lot,
um,
but
no, that was a perfect introduction, actually. So,
yeah.
by that introduction, I think people got close to you even more and got to
Mhm.
know who RJ is and where he's coming from and all. So, thank you very much for that amazing intro. So, today, RJ will give us his fans' perspective about the whole races up to Imola. So let's
Mhm.
start with first race of the season. What were you expecting on the first race of the season in Bahrain, and how did that end?
Yeah, so I'll be honest, I watch a lot of movies too. I know I gave a long-winded intro, so you can edit that I
No,
watch a lot of
no, no, no,
movies
no. Please
randomly.
go ahead.
So I watch a lot of movies though, and to be honest, if I had to describe the first race as like a movie, I was pretty much expecting the Hunger Games type of race. I didn't really know what to expect from the preseason, and I think the reference I make there is I kind of saw a grid similar to kind of like what we saw in Imola last week with just kind of some surprises, just teams up and down every which way. I really didn't have a true team I thought was just going to come out and dominate. So uh, for me, I feel like the results were kind of what a lot of the hype on social media was telling me before when it came to the race.
Yeah.
I heard a lot of stuff because up to last season it was last season, what was last season about Red Bull, Mercedes, Ferrari, and everyone was saying Ferrari's going to be back, Ferrari's going to be back. So to see them end with a P1 and P2 was absolutely nuts to me. And then Hamilton, him coming back into P3 in a lot of ways was kind of surprising. I think maybe you get those initial thoughts like, maybe Mercedes didn't get it right, those inklings, even though I think it was way too early and it's still too early to say any of that. But just going up and down the grid, I mean, you couldn't have asked for much more either. K-Mag, Haas, the doormat of Formula One for the last few seasons, scoring in the points for the first time in forever, especially Mazepin ordeal. That was absolutely wild.
That was bloody shocking, isn't it?
Yeah, and it was even more interesting to me too to just see how many teams again actually scored because behind K-Mag you had Valtteri in P6, which Alfa Romeo wasn't really doing much. Let's be honest, last season.
Yeah.
And even Guan Yu Zhou on it, or Zhou Guan Yu, pardon me, on his first race ever in Formula One to score in the points. I'm sure George Russell would have loved that a few seasons ago.
Yeah, true. The rookie year in Formula One, and he placed 10th. And that
Mm-hmm.
was like with the points and on the 10th place, that was bloody mental. That was crazy.
Yeah, and the craziest part to me, randomly, I found out after the fact. His racing number is a tribute to Kobe Bryant, and as an American fan, for people who don't know much about F1, I say a connection in some ways, and I only found that out after the race in some random post race interview. Pretty
Mhm.
cool to hear as well, at least with him. And I think as Formula One fans, I mean, I had never previously up to that race actually watched. First off, I got F1 TV. Do you have that?
We don't have that in the region, into this region.
Ah,
Honey, trust me, yeah, we live in a region that has been neglected from the whole bloody
oh
world.
man. Well, I feel for you. I didn't get it until this year, and it's weird because even in the States here, some of the coverage from like Sky Sports when it comes to like Twitter and stuff, you don't get. I gotta imagine it
Oh
might
my
be.
God, for you as well? Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
even for some tweet, we don't get that. It says, oh, your region is not supported. And I'm like, dude, I'm living in Earth. What the hell?
I know. Yeah, maybe this is, you know what? That's when anyone who's not European just doesn't get the coverage that we want. We got to change that for sure.
Yeah, that's rude. That's rude, F1. That's rude. I'm telling
Yeah,
you,
come on,
F1.
Europe. Your other counterparts across the world are trying to get in on the action.
And they want to, and they keep saying that they want to expand the viewers, the people, the fans. Hello, the fans are here, and where's your benefit?
Yeah, exactly. And what I meant to go at too with that was that I was on a Twitter Spaces actually, and I watched all of that qualifying. And if you'd have told me 2 years ago, pre-COVID, that you're gonna get into Formula One and stay up late at night to start, I would have thought you were crazy. So for me the hype was definitely around that. Like, okay, I'm a legit F1 fan. I'm watching the qualifying now. At this point, I'm pretty much addicted. Yeah.
So, what were you thinking when Red Bull had double DNF?
Oh, yeah. That is a great question. I was beyond surprised. I think a lot of the hype came into this season was, potentially a battle against Ferrari and Mercedes. And to see both of those teams, Ferrari P1, P2, Mercedes P3, P4, with Hamilton and Russell. To see Red Bull not DNF or DNF rather, I should say, for both cars, I think a lot of fans were probably laughing in some ways. I'm sure the Mercedes fans obviously were. I was shocked. I thought it was going to be a Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton three-way duel. And I still can't get over the fact that I feel like Red Bull's just had some kind of bad luck when it comes to this season. What were your thoughts initially on that?
Well, I was laughing. I was one of those people who were laughing. Well, it was funny, all right. I mean, for me, it was like, okay, they were fighting in the front, and then Max went off, total DNF, and then like a movie, it was up to Checo, and then Checo was, riding, rushing, speeding, and then boom, he's gone out as well. And I was like, what the hell is that? That's disgusting.
Yeah. I think Mercedes fans are probably just LOL at that moment. Yeah, and I also with that too, Rory, who I actually had on the DRS zone, he was hilarious when I asked about daily racing or about Netflix Drive to Survive. He's like, it's the Christian Horner swearing show, and that for an opening episode for this next possible season of Drive to Survive, I would love to see how much he was swearing unedited after that.
I mean, I agree with that, whatever the statement that he said, because it's true. I mean, even for Sky, whenever you watch a race, the commentator is actually Christian Horner. I was wondering, okay, as a team principal, you have a humongous task to do. You have a lot of issues to do. Then how the hell can this guy keep on popping on TV while those guys are running on the track, racing, driving on the track, and he's like leisurely talking, oh yeah, you know what, I was thinking like this, I was thinking like, I'm like, wow.
Yeah, he just loves finding a way in there.
Yeah, I think he's really suitable for
me. Definitely right there.
All right, so you've been doing, as you said, you were talking about with a lot of people. So you've been doing a lot of podcast episodes and been talking to a lot of regarding these races as well. So my question to you is, what's your take on the Saudi track and your point of view on having racing amid missiles from a fan's view, and also on a business point of view? Because definitely everything in F1 in the end of the day comes down to business, because after all, it's also a part of business.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I always try to break down those moments. I'll break down that question in a few different parts, but I just remember kind of what I remember seeing on social media before. And it seems like Saudi Arabia has been under constant condemnation for pretty much sports washing its way with human rights in a lot of different ways. And that same weekend, you see a lot of things on the media about this, like, mass execution, unfortunately, that it happened in a single day. And I remember seeing that Amnesty International said the race, must not be allowed to make it a cover up. And I think that race before it even happened just got really political really quick, and F1 was even more of a spectacle in some ways, I'm sure, because of it. And you have people who are well-spoken, even like Lewis Hamilton, calling on like the Saudi authorities to make changes, and they need to see more. And drivers shouldn't be, held accountable for the host country's human rights issues and a lot of different things. So I think the whole weekend was kind of built up to be bigger than it was in some ways. I don't want to say that sounds bad. I should say the race to me was going to be really hyped to see how the last week's race really wasn't fully completed. We saw Verstappen DNF, but that wasn't really a true battle between the top three guys that I think people had coming into the season. And the track itself for me, I thought it was I think it's kind of dangerous. Don't you agree?
Yeah, it is. I mean, but okay, when it comes to Jeddah, that's one of my favorite tracks because it's very, very hard to drive unless you're a very experienced driver and a very cautious driver. It actually tests your driving skills with your experience. So it's a good thing, but it's too dangerous to put some of the drivers on the track given their experience and the skills, and it's very visible on the track while they were driving. We had a lot of crashes. So it is dangerous, to be honest. It is dangerous because I don't think a lot of people can drive that track. So if a lot of Formula One drivers can't drive it, then definitely no one can come up with that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I get it. Literally, I think in that race, I would say that race could be viewed as in some ways as literally driving to survive. The physical sense on the track and just the geolocational sense with what went on that weekend. And the during even the practice session, you could see black smoke. I remember seeing that, and the second practice session ends up getting delayed. They have that emergency meeting between the drivers, principals, and Formula One CEO, Dominicali, and organizers said it was still going to go on as planned. And then the night before, you hear this drivers meeting, at 10 p.m. or 2200 local time, and it goes on for 4.5 hours, which that was just nuts to me. And then you have the race there too, with a lot of the blind corners. You see Mick with a bad crash. We don't see him until the next week at the Aussie GP, and I'm like, man, this has turned into an
A
expletive show, to say the
disaster,
least, as
yeah.
one would say. Yeah,
It's like death
yeah,
race.
exactly, pretty much. And for me, I don't want to speak personally because it comes back. You asked the second part I didn't get into, and that was from a fan's point of view, I just care about the drivers the most. And I mean, for me, it was already like, okay, I know it's a dangerous track. I just don't, who knows with the cars if it's becoming an issue. And then I see Mac actually get, pretty bad crash. And I'm like, all right, everything go on. I want to see a race. I just almost think they should cancel it, but that's just me being a fan. Then, in the business standpoint, that driver meeting went on for 4.5 hours. Obviously, Formula One, with maybe the powers that be, know that race is going to generate a lot of money. I think it was over upwards of $100 million. And obviously, safety's priceless. But from a standpoint, a business standpoint, you think about the groups that are involved with some of the missile attacks. If they do anything on that circuit, all those countries probably respectively are going to retaliate right back on them, and it's probably not going to end well, or all hell's going to be raised. And for the race to go on, I think that kind of said a little bit about the business side of F1, where it's regardless of what happened, it's going to go on. I think of Spa even from last year, where what was that race like? Literally 3 laps.
Yeah,
Three
I think,
laps.
yeah.
Yeah, it was the shortest race in F1 history, literally 3 laps, and the race organizers didn't give any fans any money back, and that I think is a little bit more of the harsh side of F1, where it's a richer sport, and I think, they weren't go on, and then you see Miami and Vegas showing up, and that's, 2 other big money areas even nowadays, which can't blame the F1. It just really tells you, I think it's more of a business thing.
I mean, Miami GP has a lot of issues with a court case, with a community issue, but still they decided to go on. They're not even listening to that part. And okay, let me ask you a question. Why does a racetrack needs a fake marina?
Oh my gosh. You want to know why? I don't know if they're, you get a lot of these circuits that have like names for certain corners and, other stuff like that. I am convinced they should already, before it's even happened, and it's not a slap against the fake marina. The biggest influencer out there, or social media brand, something should already literally make it that, like, their marina, Facebook metaverses marina, Jake Paul's arena, whatever, simply because I think that place is going to be influencer central.
Oh my
It
God.
is so, like, the thought of watching a Formula One race on a boat there, like, as a fan, I'm like, you know what? I guess maybe it's kind of cool, but it's still just kind of weird because we're in the middle of a racetrack. I don't know how I would feel, but the people with big followings that want to go to a Formula One race that I think are a little bit maybe irrelevant about what's going on around them, they're going to love that. They're going to eat that up on social media, especially with all the interactions F1 generates. It's going to be nuts.
But there's also a
It's still
part that,
cringy.
yeah, I mean, it's, yeah, exactly, it's very cringy. For God's
I
sake,
see the
everyone knows
reason
that
for
it's
it.
fake.
I see the reason for it from maybe like an exposure standpoint, and who knows, maybe it is a flop for whatever reason. I think it was intentionally put there, for whatever reason. I think maybe more exposure, maybe price your tickets for like corporate people who are going all together, or a rich family of heirs or something random like that. But yeah, I
Maybe
think it's
they should have,
cringy.
yeah, it's cringy. Maybe they should have actually gone to a actual, you know, Miami has beaches as well, so they should have tried there without actually putting a lot of fake stuff. I mean, haven't the world had enough fake stuff, going around, flying around? I'm trying to keep my cussing words inside me.
Yeah, exactly. That's, you know what? That's one photo though. Like you get like the photos on Twitter of people at the races and everything like that. And I'm already gonna go on Twitter and Instagram and look for whoever's in those boats. I'm very curious. And I don't even,
Yeah.
I wonder how much those tickets even are. I would love to know.
I mean, who pays for a fake boat on a fake water? Calls themselves, oh, I'm at Miami Marina. Excuse me, what? That's crazy.
Yeah, yeah. The one thing, there's a lot of things about Miami. I hope as a Formula One fan in America, I hope Miami gets
Yeah, true.
outside of the fake marina. I do hope it is actually, a good race overall. And I think maybe it's America's time to hopefully get it right with this track. But we'll see if the marina makes it more exciting, great. I'm just optimistic it could actually be a good race. But I only
Fingers
say that
crossed.
because it's a track no one knows nothing about in a new era of Formula One.
Well, we've had a lot of incidents when it comes to new tracks, especially last
Mm-hmm.
year, Jeddah. So let's hope that we will see some exciting racing since they're having the Miami GP anyways there.
Mm-hmm.
But here's me, fingers crossed, wishing for the good.
Yeah, and you even bring up a great point too, talking about it, being the first time ever. Is this the first time ever we have actually seen both race directors, not being able to potentially attend a race?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, as far as I know, yes. This is the first time. And imagine, not just one race director, but both of them are having COVID. I mean, for God's sake, at least one should have wear a mask. So I have a lot of conspiracy theories for this, but I'm not going to go
Mm-hmm.
on with that because anyway, Formula One is a place that they are not even giving a flying penny about these COVID rules and regulations, because we've seen many, even during the telecast, we've seen many in the paddock with no mask, a lot of people. So,
Mm-hmm.
protocols are there to follow, just like Marcy forgot to follow the regulations. There are regulations and protocols even for your health. So when you have a pandemic, not just sickness, a pandemic where the whole world went off, then you should at least give the minimum attention for that. And I don't know, for whatever the reasons, we don't have any both of the race directors now, and I hope that it's not going to be Michael Massey who's going to be replaced, because I mean, come on, everyone, be serious, for God's sake. FIA, you have more than enough people.
I will say this: if you're on the conspiracy theorist, I won't call this a theory, but
You're feeding me now.
I would love to see social media's reaction, and even Sky Sports, if Michael Massey comes back to be the race director for this race. Large assumption there, and then it's a Red Bull 1-2. Just because I think of the fans in last season, I would die. I think as a regular fan, I would love to see Twitter explode.
Twitter will explode, and so has other teams. I'm pretty sure, because after last year, I don't think FIA can handle any more backlash at all.
Oh yeah, no way, no way. They've definitely lost some trust, I'm sure, with fans. So that would
Yeah.
definitely not be a way to gain it back.
Speaking of Red Bull, how do you describe the Jeddah results? Red Bull, after double DNF, managed to land on their first victory of the season. Meanwhile, Mercedes were testing theories, but greatly showed improvements, of course. Meanwhile, I mean, for Mercedes, yeah, well, improvements, yes. Meanwhile, Ferrari was running with their own races and Charles playing cat and mouse with Max.
Mhm.
God, that track always delivered some dramatic results, I see. So, what are your thoughts on the Jeddah results?
Yeah, so Jeddah was unique to me because uh, that was the first time I think we actually really saw a true, I would call it DRS battle,
Yeah,
in some ways between Charles and Verstappen, and we even saw it between two similar teammates, on Team Alpine with Fernando Alonso and Esteban Ocon. And for me as a fan, that was like, this was one of the first races. Granted, it was the second of the season where this is what the cars were made for in some ways, and I did appreciate that aspect, in that sense. It gave us also maybe a better glimpse of kind of how the season, may or may not shake out between those two. And I felt so bad for Sergio Perez. Not, he gets his first pole position and then he kind of gets Ferrari faked out and drops back, which was rough. And there's so many storylines, I think, from this race that kind of may piece together what could happen later on in the season. We had Daniel Ricciardo. Let's start from the back. Daniel Ricciardo with the DNF, out qualified, outperformed. I think he ended up going 15th out in Q1 for like one of the first times in forever. And then Lando P7. And I feel like right now in the season, looking back at this race, I think people think Ricardo's halfway out the door in F1 just because the performance with the McLaren car this season so far. And I think you get a lot of younger fans who are all in on Lando. They think Lando's like one of the greatest drivers of, all time. And I think that was one thing to just kind of, put on his resume for that. And then, Hamilton didn't even know that points came with P10. How funny is that?
yeah. He was like, "Do I even have points for that?" I was like, "Dude, come on."
Yeah, yeah. And in this race too, I will say is Team America, K-Mag getting P9 just in front of him. That was nice to see. I'm like, okay, the first race wasn't a jip. Haas actually may not have gotten, some dumb luck, which I was cool with. And then the other storyline now, it's, look back at that race. That's the first time George Russell did better than Lewis Hamilton in their careers. And for me, I think that's been another storyline developing where people think Hamilton's on the back foot this season. And, the most recent comments after last race, he, maybe he should have quit while he was ahead last year or just retired then. And it just, it makes me kind of cringe.
Yeah, well, when it comes to Louis, everyone is a professor or a PhD holder when it comes to Louis. For Louis himself about himself. So there's that.
Yeah. Yeah. hmm
um,
I think the race though for me overall, it's just as like because I'll be honest, I root for Daniel Ricciardo. I'm a Ricciardo fan simply because that first season of Drive to Survive, but I didn't know enough about it. He kind of is like a really just good voice for the sport. So I've
yeah,
been a fan of his for a while, and for me, outside of that, I won't say I really sway for any team more besides Team Haas. But can you really blame me being from America and they're so bad, historically, at least the last few seasons. I just thought this race was really good for the sport. Again, it's a shake up, a lot of cool storylines, and kind of a foreshadowing again of what's been going on this season.
but I think part of Josephine, a lot of people, including me, love Haas just for the team principle. He's a guy
Yeah,
you need to love.
yeah. Gunther Stein lives. He lives. It might be Morrisville, I'm not mistaken, but he lives really close to where I went to college in. here in the States. And I'm like, man, I would love to go down there just to forget going back to your college campus. It's kind of like a thing people do in the States here at university. I would love to be that guy. I don't care if it's on a farm. Give me 5 minutes in a Taco Bell, wherever. He seems so funny. And don't get me wrong.
And that smile, my good God, that's worth watching.
Exactly. And I was going to say, don't get me wrong. Out of any interview this season, Haas on a podium, that is the one interview I want to see.
Oh my gosh.
That is Formula One. That's its own episode right there.
Yeah, that's like, okay. Oh, we both can wish for that, because I would root for that as well, because I would love to see Haas on a podium. I even mentioned during a tweet as well, saying that I would love to see Haas on a podium, because come on, who doesn't? Don't tell me the person who doesn't, because I don't want to know.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So after 2 years, we got to see the Melbourne Walk, where fans actually get to see their drivers up close and get mingle with them. And it was quite exciting to see Albert Park with a new look. And of course, we had 4 DRS zones after they were throwing no DRS theories. But yeah, it was an absolute blast. And the F1 Twitter almost looked like everyone was in Aussie. And Daniel Ricciardo, by the way, your favorite, his failed attempts at Australian questionnaires on F1 TV, or was it Sky? I can't remember. Anywho, yeah, I got a bit carried away with that Aussie GP intro. So
all good.
My question to you is, how's Aussie GP, and what do you think about the results and the performance of the cars and the Red Bull DNF again? And well, how was Melbourne for you overall?
Yeah, so I want to backtrack here.
Yeah.
A lot of people in America complained about this race. This race, I don't know what time it was for you when you watched this race. It was 1 o'clock in the morning here in the States. So
for us, actually, it was 11 o'clock in the morning or something like that. And in our defense, come on, US people, please, when you guys have races, we watch. So come on.
Yeah, the struggle can honestly be real soon. But it's so funny because, you know, we complain at the US, and normally these races are on in the morning, which isn't a huge deal for me, but it was funny to see that. And I actually, weirdly enough, I was in a different time zone here in the States, and I started the race even an hour late. So I really wasn't watching it until about 2 in the morning, which that was
sleepy.
Yeah, I should say, yeah, difference in time zone there. But it was, for me, I don't know about you, and I'll ask you the question after I give you the answer here. But out of any race, the most this season I really want to go to, even preseason, it was this one, to be honest. Miami would be sweet, don't get me wrong, but like going somewhere, it was Melbourne. This atmosphere just seemed unreal to me. I think Albert Park is a really cool area outside of the track. So I was expecting a really good race, and I was glad I stayed up and was glued in for the most part. And the question I meant to ask you before we go on, what race this season, just out of curiosity, what race this season, whether it's happened or going to happen, are you most excited for?
Well, actually, to be honest, as a fan, if I wanted to travel, I would agree with you that I would actually want to go to Australia for the Melbourne GP, because I think when it comes for the person who loves an F1 race, motorsports in general, it's a great opportunity and an exposure to experience the races, the driving, the grids, everything, because it's only divided, only limited for a particular class or a particular ticket. Everyone was able to walk the track. Everyone was able to talk with the racers during the Melbourne Walk. So I think that Australian GP organizers nailed it with that. What I'm excited to see more is that, well, if it's going to be this boring like Imola, then I'm not excited at all.
Yeah, yeah, that's a great point. That's something else. And this was, again, one race was hoping Danny Rick would come back, and crazy enough, the man got P6. You know, the craziest storyline for me, which I was really hoping going into this year with Melbourne, was, and call me crazy because I just was hoping, I was like, if this happens, I'll go out and play the lotto the next day. I was hoping every driver, if they were from a respective country, would actually win their home Grand Prix. So I was really optimistic, that
For
Ricardo
Danny to win
would
it.
win this, and a P6, if that's a win for based on his season, I'll take it. Um, I mean, looking at this track again too, this point right now in the season, I'm like, all right, I still think Mercedes, even though they're on the back foot, I still think they can surprise people. I still think it's going to be Red Bull, Ferrari more than Mercedes, just because of some of the reliability issues. And this race kind of in some ways did give us that, the top three finishers, Ferrari, Red Bull, Russell, then
Well,
Hamilton. That was
yeah.
pretty kind of on pace to what I think people maybe in some ways were expecting. Maybe that grid's a little jumbled. And then you get McLaren kind of where they were before last year, P5 Norris, P6 Ricardo. And for me, it was like, one bad race for Lewis the week before. Now is Mercedes back. McLaren the week before. Now are they back after Norris again? P5 Ricardo, P6. And then we also had Haas out of the points. Is Haas back? So it was great. It was a great reason to stay up.
I think this season so far, though we had a boring race in Imola, by the way, I keep mentioning it because it was actually boring. So
yeah, I mean it was you're right. I should say take it back. It was a boring race, but the results I think were exciting for me. As
yeah,
weird as it sounds,
exactly. So I think we've experienced a little twisted topsy-turvy when it comes to results and the performance during these all races, which leads to the next question, since I keep mentioning Imola as boring. So RJ, share your thoughts on Imola GP, and we had our first sprint race of the season as well. So I'm sure you have a lot to talk about Imola because the sprint, when we had the sprint race, we only have 3 races for the whole season this year. But then Ross Brown came up and said, "Oh, you know what? We are planning to make it 6." And then people were like, "Well, they went
shoot,
nuts."
here we are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
That's oh
so
man.
exactly. So it's very controversial. I mean, we understand it because sprint race is only 21 laps and it doesn't even start to start the tire. There's no space for tire degrade. I'm stammering. So for tire issues, right? And then it doesn't even give any strategies as well because whoever in front goes in front. That's it, and you rarely have a time to um overtake another driver as well, given the track size and the car sizes in Imola, for an example, because it's a very old track. It's a very classic one, but the new cars are very bigger than the smaller, the cars that we used to have. So, smaller track, bigger cars, issues. So, and we saw DRS trains as well. So there were issues when it comes to the sprint. Uh, I think like F1 Diplomat mentioned, a reverse grid would have been very great for a sprint race because then the slow cars will be in front and the faster cars, anyway, they can try to overtake and go in front. So there will be an excitement. So what do you think overall about the sprint races and the Imola GP results?
Yeah. If I don't really know to even backtrack. I don't even know how they actually come up with which race gets the sprint race. If it's because this is normally a boring track with hard to overtaking, I guess I see it to make it more exciting. But I completely agree with those sentiments. The reverse grid here would have been really cool. And the crazier part is it was almost a year to the day when the sprint races were first announced to now when they've been announced to being expanded. My biggest critique with the sprint race, I know it's more exciting to see more teams get points. I just think it's what are we valuing the season on in some ways now, I guess? Because the sprint races are giving drivers way more of a chance to score points that may not have traditionally. Our teams now kind of just pretty much going all out. That sprint race, that's what Haas did. They stuck with a different strategy on the medium tires, pretty much went for it all when everyone else was on soft, maybe thinking it was a two-stop strategy and completely got it wrong. And in some ways, I think kind of hosed their drivers a little bit. Should we keep them or not? I think remains to be seen. I think the concept's cool. I just think race results were, I guess, I don't know, kind of, I don't want to say boring, but, maybe in some ways what was going to be expected. Obviously not with Mercedes in some ways, but I don't know. I think a track like this, I think it kind of sets you up for failure. Like you mentioned the DRS trains before when the actual race occurred. It just was a little more boring in some ways.
All right. So the next question is about the Imola race. So
Yeah.
we were super excited about Imola, and Imola first made the news for this season when Charles' watch was stolen, to be honest.
Oh my
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, who steals a watch of a
What
driver
fans?
you like?
Those aren't
Yeah.
even fans. That's just messed up.
So then we had the first sprint race, as you said, and then the actual race. And the outcomes were, for many, it was horrendous. And for others, it was amazing because the whole weekend was, we can say it was all Red Bull. Yeah, it's totally Red
Mm-hmm.
Bull. The sprint was Red Bull, the race was Red Bull, it's all Red Bull. But,
Yeah.
well, Ferrari was dominant during all these races, but not in their home country. And
Yeah.
the red crowd was expecting a win for the red boys, and that probably might have ended with just red wine and lots of it. So,
Oh
how
yeah,
do
by
you
the
think?
bottle,
Yeah.
just one glass, one big glass.
Yeah. And then they would have said, okay, bring the whole damn case.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you think about these performance of Ferrari and the win with the Red Bull and the race?
Yeah. So I should actually ask you, and I don't know if this term exists, and maybe I'm just having a brain fart because that's a little bit later right now. What do you actually call it again? When I want to call it the triple crown. You get the fastest lap, pole position, and win the race. Because the last race in Australia, that happened to Charles Leclerc, and then this race, that's what happens with Max Verstappen. Is there a term for that? Is it triple crown, right? Or no?
Yeah, I think I saw some were calling it a triple crown, so I think it
Okay.
is. I'm not
Yeah.
sure as well. Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, when you asked me to come on, I was like, you know what, I got to do a little bit of research and see when that happened last, and that's never happened before. Where actually that's happened in back-to-back races. So that was unique, some F1 history there too. And for me, I was, again, going back to last race, Daniel Ricciardo, hoping he would win his home race. I was like, okay, I want Charles to win this. We'll see what happens. And the risk reward, man, that some teams, maybe the sprint races are going to mean more when it comes to season results. Because were you as surprised as I was with Ferrari, not guaranteeing, or in some ways, a podium position just to try to get the fastest lap, and then Charles hits a sausage curve, to say the least, and his dreams are shattered.
Exactly. I mean, okay, when it comes to Ferrari and their home country, just like you mentioned about the home country wins, I was expecting Ferrari to win in Italy as well because
Mm-hmm.
it's their home country, and it would have been crazy good for them to take a win there. But since he got out in the qualifying earlier, and then with hitting with Daniel Ricciardo, he went off on the race as well, even before completing the race. I mean, it just started, and he went off. So that's bad luck, and it keeps happening to him. So that's like the worst thing that could happen to a driver. And then he had the pace, he was going for it, and then I think he got a bit greedy with the speed and push and all. When it comes for the car, I mean, it's a mistake that any driver can do, any driver could make. We've seen that happens to a lot, even during the last season. But I think Charles could and definitely will overcome that, and he will go
Mhm.
for, because he has the talent, and we've seen how he managed pressure when it comes to driving with wheel to wheel with Max Verstappen. So, but I didn't actually expect them to lose in this manner in Italy.
Yeah, I was pleasantly surprised, and there was a lot of hype around Ferrari going into this weekend, and I think if they would have gotten a 1-2, or heck, even it would have been Charles again doing what Max did here with the Triple Crown, I think Scuderia Ferrari would have gone absolutely bonkers. And to see them, Carlos in particular, he's his own storyline with, mental toughness and apparently, maybe struggling early on. Him to go out in the beginning, not even finish a lap was just, all I got to say. I think of Mario, losing a life in this case. It was just, that was tough to see. And for me, I just was so shocked to see even that the one of our first DRS trains this race, like we had mentioned before, where Hamilton now drops back down P13, and then you got George Russell back up in P4, and there's that weird Mercedes storyline even outside of the two top dogs, where Lewis is showing some cracks in the armor. Russell's the future, to overly exaggerate both of those things in some ways, but that was really shocking to me too.
Well, I hope that they will overcome, especially Carlos Sainz, so because he deserves a lot more than that, because he's a very talented, skillful
Mm-hmm.
driver. We've
Yeah.
seen it. We've seen how he drives and what he's capable of, and this is actually very sad what's happening to him. And do you think that he can overcome and he will perform better before they get to make a choice of whom to support more? Because comparing both the Ferrari drivers, Carlos Sainz is falling behind while Charles Leclerc is going in front.
Yeah. That's a great point. And I forgot to even mention, let's not forget, he signed a 2-year extension before this race.
Yeah.
He obviously he's already on some pressure, but I don't know in his mind if he was more relieved with the extension or feeling even more pressured. I might even say the latter, but who knows? For me though, going into this season, I personally felt like Carlos really shocked me. I thought him leaving McLaren in a little bit of a ways kind of was I don't want to say like a mistake, because let's be honest, in Formula One, Ferrari is one of those seats that really everyone wants to drive, even if they'll admit it or not. And I feel like when he got in there, I feel like he proved everybody way wrong. And going into this season, I was more hyped that this might prove that he's maybe better than Charles. Not that I have a real dog in that fight. And I think personally, again, going back to I hope the home driver wins their home race. If he's able to kick it out in Spain and maybe win that race, maybe some of the doubters, maybe the pendulum swings a little bit back in his favor. But Charles, the top guy, obviously on that team right now. And one thing I did learn too, because let's talk about maybe the winners of the week in a way. We got Aston Martin finally getting in the points, and for how many different teams were represented, actually having scored points in a single season in the first 4 races. That goes back all the way back to F1's first season back in 1958. So that was pretty cool. Again, little random history tidbit for you there, but that was cool to finally see that our got about it in some ways. Even though Aston Martin's been a dumpster fire this year, the regulations, I guess, got it right where you could consider it a level playing field just based on what track these drivers are at.
Speaking of tracks, what are your thoughts on Miami GP and the predictions? As we spoken earlier about the Miami GP, we were talking about the, well, fake marina, but
Yeah.
this is going to be the first time ever that they are having this track for the GP. So, what are your thoughts overall about the GP when it comes for the race, and your predictions for MGP? Whom do you think who will win?
Oh, I like both of those. I expect to hear who you think's going to win too, obviously here. And for me, it's this race. So personally, I would have rather seen this race as a sprint race. If we're starting new races, let's get the people what we want. Let's give us 2 races, selfishly
That's
enough.
actually a great idea because I
Yeah.
think, yeah, if I hello FIA, this is us
Mm-hmm.
calling you. If you can hear his suggestion, I would agree on that because. To be honest, yeah, when it comes to a new track, the sprint will be a great way to test it, a great way, and
Yep.
it will be less dangerous as well.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And who knows? Maybe Vegas that'll be a next year. So we'll see if they're listening. Maybe they'll actually listen. But uh, I think personally,
You know the funny part, though, RJ. You know the funny part.
yeah.
Even though they are listening, they will never give a damn about what we are saying.
That's good. And I bet you, I'll just throw it here. If whoever does mention that and it actually happens, I bet you gets promoted. He or she. We'll never know. But that could be. I don't know. Maybe it's that good of an idea. But um, yeah. But yeah, you're right. They probably won't do anything. But the
Or if
race,
they
I'm
can, actually,
obviously
they might take the suggestion and they will go up with the suggestion like it's their own.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. Take credit from outside sources. Plagiarism is a real thing, folks. Yeah.
So yeah, I was interrupting you several times.
Oh, hey,
Please
no
go ahead.
worries. I love it. Free flowing here. But the track, I'm sure from a technical standpoint, there's going to be a lot of people who've already been breaking it down. Like, if you know Bryson, obviously, as well, who does such a great job with a lot of the technical stuff, or even um, Dr. Obbs as well, just kind of explaining tracks and different concepts and how the car comes together or doesn't come together on certain circuits. They just do such a good job. But for me, I'm excited to see the views from the fake marina, first and foremost. I hope it is personally an exciting race. I'll just make that blanket statement. I hope it's not a boring race. And what do I mean by that? Um, Selfishly, I hope there is some sort of safe collision, if that's a thing. I think that makes a new race kind of exciting. And I think on a circuit that no driver knows or is driven consistently, I think that'll happen. So I'm expecting at least one yellow, red flag, obviously, there. And then on top of it, too, I think with the podium, I think it's really anyone's guess. I think on some circuits as fans, it's like kind of like Monaco. Whoever takes pole is pretty much going to win the race. This obviously is nowhere near that circuit, but it's trying to maybe be a mini Monaco. Obviously, they're way different. I think the qualifying won't mean much personally. And that comes back again just to the unfamiliarity of the circuit. What I would like to see is kind of a buckshot podium. If there's ever been a race for Haas to get on the podium, it's here in America. I want to see Shaq or Pitbull give a trophy to Team Haas or just on the podium in general. But all jokes aside, I do actually see it being kind of Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, heck, maybe even McLaren. I really don't know what to expect here with the podium, to be honest.
All right, then I'll go ahead and say, may Haas win the podium so that you can
Yes,
be
I love
happy
it.
and I can be happy.
I love it, but I gotta ask you though, realistically, if you do, a little bit more into the pre-race breakdowns, do you think this race, kind of given what we've seen with the 4 previous races, do you just think this race circuit in general suits any team in particular? Like we've had the previous story where Red Bulls, maybe I'll say, has been maybe more of just like kind of mechanical issues, maybe somewhat bad luck. I feel like we know, for instance, like what's blanket black and white. McLaren has issues with their brakes breaking after the first race. Do you, for more or less long-winded question, do you see this race circuit suiting any team in particular?
Well, when it comes to Miami or the US, it's very far from the European side. So the budget cap affects highly when it comes to the upgrades as well. So they don't actually bother to bring any upgrades, any major upgrades, especially because it's just one race in Miami and then back to Europe. So they won't be spending a lot of money on the flights, traveling back and here, but going back and forth with all these getting back to Miami and then getting back to shipping back to Europe, and also there might be minor upgrades for the car. So having said that, I won't be expecting any major changes when it comes to the cars, which means there won't be any major performance expecting from the cars as well, major performance expectations, if that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
But however, I have a feeling that looking at the performance, McLaren has been up and up and up and up and up, and Lando performed well as well. So there might be, let me see. I will put Red Bull down for the fourth place, right? And take Ferrari, McLaren, and George Russell in front for the podiums. So let's see how they
Okay.
perform. Yeah, if Carlos managed to go up, then that's going to be two Ferraris because the cars are really well. And apparently, Carlos' car had the new power unit as well, if I'm not wrong. He had a major upgrade in his car, while Charles was running the normal one with him. So that's why he had the speed issue when he was running there as well. So we've seen the result as well. So if both cars were upgraded in the proper way, then there will be a podium for both Ferraris, unless Carlos hits with that bad juju, So if not, yeah, I think Lando will be up in there. George Russell will be up in there because I've seen that kid drive the Mercedes. He's having better luck as well when it comes to racing in front, because we've seen how he managed to, crawl into the front amongst that Bottas, Ricardo, and Sainz issue. So I will put Russell on the podium, Lando on the podium, and Charles on the podium.
Ooh, I like that. I could sleep well at night with that.
Well, good night for you then.
Exactly. Yep.
So,
Snoring.
yeah. So we started the season with the testings from Spain to Bahrain, and then we went from Bahrain to Saudi to Australia to the home of Ferraris, Italy, and then heading to Miami. And afterwards, like a circle of life, we are going back to Spain, where everyone is expecting a lot of changes. Like I said earlier, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of changes, as in a lot of upgrades. Everyone is expecting a lot of upgrades when it comes to Barcelona, because it's in Europe and the other races will be also in Europe. So it's a great way for them to test their upgrades as well, rather than traveling from one country to the other end of Earth. So upgrades from the teams, and then when I say teams, I meant actually Mercedes. All right.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly.
So what are your expectations and predictions for Spain GP this season? And whom are you rooting for, or the team that you're rooting for Spain? Obviously, it's Daniel Ricciardo. People, he already mentioned that. So, and do you believe Carlos Sainz could take a home victory? You did mention regarding it, but do you actually believe that he will win?
Yeah. So I'll start backwards there. I would say, yeah, I actually think Carlos could win. If I will personally root for him, and I think he could. I think any race, call me crazy. I think any race he's been in this season, with outside of really crashing, I think Australia, Melbourne, his strategy on the hards initially, he didn't have the pace there. Him going off the track, it was a good fast forward to probably what was going to happen in that race. I didn't really see him getting back unless something crazy happened. I think the rest of the other three races, granted last week wasn't a great show. I think he had a chance to possibly win. Obviously, Imola wasn't the circuit for it, but going into those weekends, I think he could win. So I'm going to stick with the same, and I think he, going into this weekend, could win. We're so low, though, on the development curve, and there's so many components to these cars where when you talk about unlocking it, and if you're really bringing these upgrades, Mercedes in the beginning of the season, and we've learned, unfortunately didn't maybe get it right. Ferrari and Red Bull did have that. And if you're bringing some of these upgrades, again, because we're so early on the development curve with this season, I think if they get it right, they could be taking home with, really shocking some people. I don't think it's going to be like a runaway win for any team in particular, but I'll put my money on Carlos. My expectations are those teams that are going to make the upgrades. I think maybe it's a better foreshadowing of maybe what the actual standings in some way could be. I think we've had a lot of, last week was the first wet race, if you will, of the season. This is a track that more drivers do know, and are more familiar with. Not as maybe dangerous, obviously, as like a Jeddah, and it's not the first race of the season where we got maybe the results we wanted to. So I'm thinking personally, I think it's gonna be, maybe this is one of those races where we're going back to kind of like that 1-2 lockout in some ways. I personally would expect, I'm optimistic. I think this will be maybe what people were hoping was an Imola. I think this might be a Ferrari 1-2, to be honest, or something up there similar of the sort. I go back to last season, it was Lewis and Max. This season, it could be a different pairing. So I would anticipate Max will be up there as well with the Ferraris personally. Do you yourself think that this race in particular will be more of a foreshadowing to what the grid could be like final standings wise?
You mean the Barcelona one?
Yeah, exactly.
Well, for me, I think there will be a lot of changes when it comes to Barcelona racing, because they've tested their cars there at first, and they know how their cars perform as well with the data that they have collected. And they will be bringing, a lot of teams will be, I think all the teams will be bringing, hopefully, upgrades for the cars as well. Hopefully, I'm rooting for Carlos to take a home win, because that guy deserves it. Really, that guy deserves it. But if it's going to be a bit, how do I put it? I hope that it ends well. Okay, as the saying goes, all's well that ends well, or something, right? But I think Ferrari might be up in front as usual, and maybe Red Bull will be there up in front with Mercedes if they manage to plug the upgrades right this time, at least.
Yeah, no, I could definitely I could see that going on. There's always some random storyline, let's be honest, going into some of these weekends. And I think the
Yeah.
upgrades a random storyline, but I think the following week there will be a lot of critique going on to, if teams got it right or they didn't. And I think it could be in some ways a harsh reality for what we're going to expect the rest of the season. Or I think, again, it could be we're still low in the development curve. Teams still could just be really toying around with what they're doing. And I don't know personally. I feel like ride height and porpoising are the two main things that obviously go hand in hand, but there's still obviously a lot of other components behind the scenes we don't know. And like, I think of it in some ways like these cars are so complex, but I think a team like Haas, all these engineers, on any team are so brilliant. But I almost think like a car like Mercedes probably has, I don't know, in an engineering perspective, if fewer parts or more parts are going to make this car go faster. But, even if some of the smaller things are just that off, if you're tweaking it, what is the real definition of a major upgrade in terms of these teams' minds? And that's something we don't know. And I'm hoping, some teams in particular maybe get those changes right, even if it's maybe a small upgrade. And then this personally.
Well, I hope so too, because I saw one of the tweets with Bryson that says regarding regarding the Red Bull flow, that it slides and then it takes the purposing back or something. I can't actually exactly remember the tweet, but yeah, he mentioned regarding the Red Bull flow. And then there were tweets going around regarding the Ferrari flow, because when Carlos hit the wall, and then they had to pick the Ferrari and go. At that time, they have taken some pictures, and the flow was very visible. So they were, or a lot of people were mentioning that, and then explaining a lot regarding the flows as well. So as you mentioned, we're not the engineers in this part. We are the curious ones
Mm-hmm.
that going after the engineers, asking the questions, to fulfill our knowledge curiosity. So let's hope for the best, and I really hope that there will be some different results, and I really hope that K-Mac could win a podium, because I think he can. He definitely can.
Mm.
The way he's performing, I think he can.
Yeah. Let me ask you this here.
Yeah.
Miami, outside of, we talked about it with K-Mag, Miami and Spain, because these are two races that we're yet to see here. Is
Mhm.
there any one storyline or thing you would like to see happen?
For Miami, I think K-Mac can win. So I hope that
Okay, so
he
that's
wins his
okay.
first podium.
That's the bold take there. All right, I like it. Yeah, I also randomly too. Speaking of Haas, um, I would like to see Mick getting the points, please. If it's on American soil, even better. I'll take it. But it's just one thing. I'm just like, man, he's I as call me crazy here. Has Latifi scored points before? Has he? I think he
Well,
has, right?
yeah.
Yeah, because right
Has he?
now, if I'm not
I mean,
mistaken, it's
wait.
it's
As far as I know, I don't think so. I'm so sorry
no.
for the Latifi fans, but as far as I know, I can't actually remember, because last season, the Williams were way behind. So I'm so sorry, but yeah, has he? Because this season
I
he's
don't
been
know.
crashing a lot.
I want to throw a quick Google on this and actually see.
Yeah,
But
please do.
Latifi aside, let's just say though, because Latifi's in his own thing, and I will say for some reason when Latifi crashes into a wall,
He has no idea what
Verstappen
went wrong.
Verstappen does pretty well. So, side note, anyways, but I meant to say is Mick, I think, pretty much is the only driver on the grid that has not scored a point. So I would like to see that happen for once. And
I think, as F1 Diplomat mentioned, Mick has a tendency of testing his driving cars the first time. The first year he will be testing it, and on the second year he performs well. Though this is his second year in F1 career, this is the first year for his new car. So
yep, that's a great
I
point.
think, yeah, so I think he'll be performing very well next year. But as you said, I really wish for this whole season at any race, Mick Schumacher, please score points.
Yeah, that would be nice. I guess that's another reason to watch there. It'd be nice to see it. I'm still just trying to get a quick Google search and see if I can find if he did get it or not. I
All
think he
right,
actually
and
did last year.
really, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
I'm
No,
very
no.
sure.
I mean, I just feel bad for the Latifi fans. They're probably yelling in their
Yeah.
their headphones right now. No, he did. Yeah, he did. He got seventh in Hungary and ninth in Belgium, and he has 7 points. So he has 7 career points all last season.
Wow, that's improvement. That's
Yep.
improvement. Yeah.
So who knows? He might not be that way this year, but for me, I think also I meant to say, not to kind of jump around here. We talked about Drive to Survive a little bit earlier. The one thing, if Drive to Survive want to get it right, and I'll say it before because I meant to say it and I kind of had a mental brain fart here. What are
Given
your
the fact that you're
thoughts?
talking, so it's okay.
Exactly, yeah. What are your thoughts on how much um, Drive to Survive accurately portrays Drive to Survive, and what could they actually do to make it better?
All right. Here's my honest opinion, because I try to give my honest opinions during all tweets and during all the podcasts that I do. So
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to DRS, DTS, sorry. Hey man, I love DRS. Okay, I love this guy's podcast, so I have no issue with that.
Yeah, yeah.
um, when it comes to DTS, one point is that it's a great way to bring new exposure, new fans into the sport. Because
Mm-hmm.
we as fans, we know Formula One, but if I go outside and speak to 10 people, out of 10, there might be only one person who knows about Formula One, right? So through media, through shows like this, it makes people get to know about it. The awareness is built, and you get new fans as well. It's a great development for the motorsport as well. Having said that, um, now this show goes as a reality show, not a variety show. You know,
Mm-hmm.
in a variety show, you can lie, you can twist and turn stuff. It's okay because in a variety show, there's a character for every single person who's on the TV. But when it comes to a reality show, there should be reality included. It's not, and this is a sport. This is more like a docu that they're doing. It's not even a reality. This is a docu series that they're trying to do. So in a docu series, if you are taking, for an example, if for a person, okay, let's say that you and I are in the sport in GTS, and you talk about, oh, I'm so disappointed at this race and this and that, and you say something about somebody, but it's not out of bad blood, but they take that part, edit it out, and put it on somewhere that it's not even related to the race that you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
That the viewer who's watching it gets the idea that, oh, they have bad blood, oh, he's going after this person. I think due to DTS, a lot of people are misunderstanding Max Verstappen. A lot of people are misunderstanding Christian Horner, because of course he can be a prick as well. All right, I'm not saying he's not, but the way that he is being appeared on the TV, it might have gotten worse because of that. So they need to, it's a great way, it's a great docu-series. They need to keep on doing the shows, but they need to come up with a plan to stick with the right frame, you know. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, it's actually very interesting. It is interesting because people love behind the scenes. People love to watch those things. Even we as fans, I think RJ would agree, we as fans, we would love to see behind the scenes during the paddock, you know, the garage stuff and what they talk, what are they eating, all those stuff. We get excited because we want to know. Because
Mm-hmm.
people, human beings are very curiostic people. So if they
No.
can stick with the right
Yeah.
part, then I don't think they need to build up all these fake stories, because they are just attracting unwanted attention and creating unwanted drama, and people are actually misunderstanding a lot. So it's very bad, because sometimes Max makes sense, whatever he says. Not every time, but some of the things that he says does make sense. And one of the reasons that he said that he's not going to be on DTS is because he said that whatever he says, they pick it up, they edit it out, and they twisted it and put it on somewhere else that it doesn't even make sense. So it's true, you know. I'm being very fair here. I'm not taking
Mm-hmm.
anybody's side.
No, yeah, I don't
So
think you're wrong. I just had to ask, obviously, as another fan here, because I tried to watch the last season and I didn't watch it all. I'm sure I will probably sooner or later. I think the first season was, I mean, I'd be curious to see from a fan's perspective, like such as yourself, what you thought of, just based on
I
everything.
think
Because, you know,
I think for DTS, the first season was a flop for them. All right,
really, okay.
they when they came with the season, they didn't have that much of an attention, and they didn't get that whatever they expected. They didn't get that level when they had the first season released. So that's why from the second season, they came up with this idea, you know, twisting, turning all these things, and then they focused it. And a lot of people actually took it, you know, they took that bait. They loved it.
Mm-hmm.
They loved these fights. They loved this drama, you know. So what DTS did, it's actually a business point of view for them. So it's fair enough. Okay, in the end of the day, money is what matters for them because they are running a business. So but at the same time, they should keep the integrity intact, because a show shouldn't take over a sport. The sport is should be in the middle of that show, because that's the center of attention, you know. So that's where they went wrong.
Yeah.
From my point of view, I think that's where they went wrong.
Yeah, I appreciate that answer. I don't think I've really actually ever asked that one because I almost in some ways it's almost like new fans coming into F1. It's like I was in that position a few years ago. So it's really unique to hear that standpoint. For me, it's like I personally feel that F1 drivers in some ways are limited and kind of what they can and can't say in the public
Yeah.
spotlight there. And for me, it's like if you're trying to actually get the trust back in the normal fans of Formula One, which maybe Drive to Survive truly never was intended to be for the regular fans. I shouldn't say normal fans, but the regular fans of F1 who know the sport, you know, and
I
have
think
followed.
the regular fans would love it if they could keep it real. Because, for an
Exactly. And
example, yeah, exactly. I mean, if Louis says, "Oh, I hated that moment, I hated that race, and I hated that person at that time," this is not what Louis said. I'm just saying, hypothetically, if Louis says something like that, regarding a race moment, it's very easy for a person to get hyped up during a race moment. So that even for Max, it's the same. He yells and screams over the radio, and that's given because he's driving, for God's sake. You have a lot of pressure on it. But if you take
yeah.
that word, you twist it, you edit it, and you add it on a separate episode that doesn't even involve this race, and then whoever watched the show gets a different wrong idea. You know what I mean? If that makes sense,
Mm-hmm.
So
No,
yeah.
I think you're exactly right. And I was going to say that the wheels were turning so well. I think we're just kind of bouncing off each other. But I was going to say for them to get it right next season, if there's like episodes that I think as a fan, it would be just awesome to see and they could really get it right. Maybe put some trust back into actually telling the stories real. Give
Yeah.
us the discussion between the Mazepins and Haas. Love to see that. And
Yeah.
also give us, better yet, I would actually be okay Drive to Survive season 5. Give me the 4.5 hour long meeting
In Jeddah.
between the drivers and the team principals and the Formula One CEO as, there's news of these attacks going on adjacent to the track, obviously in Jeddah there.
Yeah, true. I mean, when it comes to last season for DTS, they edited the last race very badly. They just made it like a fairy tale, and that's it. They didn't put the controversy issues. There should be a balance between a show when it comes to docu-series, because it's not like Keeping Up with the Kardashians or a Real Housewives in Los Angeles or New Jersey or anywhere. So if they would have put the balance in between those races, like, okay, you can show the side of celebration and you can show the side of the controversy, the tweets, the blow-ups. You keep it real. Even there you
Mm-hmm.
get drama, so you have enough drama in there. So what made a lot of people mad was they didn't include that. So it's like they're playing into some sort of a storyline. So it's honest enough, it's bad for the people who are in the receiving end. So I hope that they will come up with a good keep it real statement with the show. And like you mentioned, I would love to see that meeting. Please, whoever is responsible, please record that.
Yeah, time will only tell, and hopefully they'll give us what we want. And if there's any other storylines too, I'm sure there'll be a few moments where if they want to get it right, they'll keep it real.
Yeah. Speaking of storylines and keeping it real, I will ask you 3 questions before we wrap it up, and you need to
Okay.
answer which one you would choose among those 3. So this is just for fun, all right?
Okay.
So you get to choose a team principal to run your team. And imagine that you are this big hair, big shot, big CEO at some sort of a humongous company, and you get to enter Formula One. So the options that you're getting is Fernando Alonso and Max Verstappen. Who would you choose?
Well, this is principle, right?
Yeah, team principals, not
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I
drivers.
want to make sure I heard that right. For some reason, I obviously they're drivers. Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna go. I'm gonna go with Fernando Alonso.
And why?
Fernando Alonso to me. So great question because Fernando Alonso had a historic career, and me being a newer fan, I didn't really realize how historic he was, or some of his greatness. I think he's just raced in so many different eras that perspective is truly priceless. I think if you're talking about maybe a new and upcoming type of driver, Max Verstappen might be the more obvious choice, but Fernando Alonso, I think, just brings with him a wealth of knowledge that is pretty priceless from a few different, very different racing eras, and that's my sole reason right there. His sheer resume and experience.
All right. That's actually a good wise choice.
Yeah.
Okay. Between churros and pretzels, which one would you choose?
Oh, pretzels for sure. Some roll. I'll say I don't know if you eat pretzels regularly or not, but pretzels is a snack I usually eat a decent amount. Pretzels with some mustard, that is the way to go. Some mustard, awesome.
All right. Between DTS and DRS, you're sure. Which would you choose?
Which would I choose?
Yeah.
Oh man,
Okay. Just say that. Okay, you get the chance to handle DTS as a person, and then you get the chance to handle your show, even expand wider. So which one would you choose? DTS and DRS?
Oh, that is a great question. You know what? Oh, I would, weirdly enough, I'll go with DTS. And I don't say that to put myself down, but I also don't want to build myself up too much. But for me, I would do DTS because I think they're like my platform in particular is trying to give, as much as it's race breakdowns and stuff like that, it's trying to talk about the stories, keeping it real in our own lives in some ways. And it's kind of gotten away from that, but it's meant to be, the racing stories in our lives, how people got into F1, things that maybe aren't covered as much by the general day to day in Formula One, keeping it real. But I would choose DTS because I'm sure, like yourself, who knows, maybe if they're listening, let us co-direct an episode and actually keep it real with the fans, to say the least. So I would do
Yeah,
that. I think it's
that's great.
I
Actually.
actually, yeah. And if F1, this is another idea out there I'm going to throw out because I just thought of it. If F1 is all about this we race as one, diversity and inclusion and everything, and if they wanted to really get it right, and this might be its own series, if they really wanted to get it right, any home Grand Prix, they should have a producer or someone from that country, from that state, from that province actually record and film under the general guidance maybe of DTS what that race should actually be interpreted as. And I think that would be way more fascinating than what we get right now, where it's kind of just this cookie cutter here and there. So personally, I think DTS would be what I would want to go for, and maybe kind of rebrand the concept totally of what that show is to keep it real for the people, not only that are Formula One fans, but are also, from that area or that country or have those same values or ideals.
Perfect. All right. I am going to put you in trouble with this one. The last question.
Okay. All right.
This is an extra bonus one. All right. So you
Yep.
get a chance to hire a host for your show, and the options are Denzel Clarkson, the celebrity that we have,
Mm-hmm.
and Ted Kravitz. Who would you choose?
Oh my gosh.
Oh my
Den's
God.
obvious. Yeah, Den's obviously. I can't some of the F1 pundits make me cringe. Make me cringe a little
Trust
bit.
me, honey, everybody gets cringe.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah. And you know, Den's I've missed him a little bit obviously here on the show, but the idea still remains the same with us. And for me, I like I maybe it's too colloquial now to say, but I like keeping it real. I like the fans that are level-headed, that have no real stake in the way the sport's interpreted. It's just trying to have real conversations with real people, and that's kind of the way I would keep it. And with me for Ted Kravitz, he'd be awesome, but the only way I think I would actually get, would actually get him on probably a really large bribe. So I don't know if I'm into that yet, especially
All
with
right, then
the
let
way
me change the
F1 is
question
run.
and ask you this. Then let me change the options and then ask you this: Ted Kravitz
Okay.
or Johnny Herbert?
Oh, oh my gosh. I'll take Ted Kravitz. No
For
comment
the
on Johnny Herbert.
win!
That's all I'm
All
gonna
right.
say. No comment.
All right. so much for coming today, RJ, even though it's very late, by the way, for RJ to come drop in. Very, very thankful for you for coming. So just tell the listeners how to find the DRS show and how to find you and how to contact you if they have any opinions, thoughts, feedbacks, yeah, it's your chance.
No, I love it. Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, thank you, obviously, first and foremost, for having me on this platform. I have watched, or I should say, rather, listened to your podcast episodes on the way to work, like I do a lot of things. So it's been a nice just to regular have that in my life. And it's cool because obviously a lot of people who know F1, it's like it kind of is a day of the week. And I like to start my mornings off with even more F1. So it's been nice to get that as well. For me, though, personally, I run the Daily Racing Stories, the DRS Zone podcast. We're on Twitter and Spotify at _ the DRS Zone. And then, or sorry, I should say Twitter and Instagram at _ the DRS Zone. And then you can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, a lot of streaming services. We're just the DRS Zone podcast. And then for me personally, not to throw too much to remember out, my @ is just Rhett, RHETT _ Baylor, BAYLOR. And for me personally, I will say I love just really engaging with people. I'm really honestly on my platform, just kind of trying to find anyone with a unique story. I do have an episode coming out, what will be tomorrow or recently here, coming up soon, just about a fan's awful experience at Circuit of the Americas and what hopefully people in Miami, or what we can get right from a fan perspective in Miami. So just unique things kind of like that. Yep. So that's the whole point of my podcast, obviously. Follow us if you can, like, comment, subscribe. I'll be cringy and say that. Not that that's a bad thing either, but it's just a community, just trying to have a conversation with people. My podcast is my form of therapy personally in my own life. So if you have something great to say, great. If you don't, I'm all ears and try to do the best I can. So yeah, thank you again so much for having me on here.
Thank you so much for coming, RJ. And I will definitely put your Twitter ID on the description below on the episode, so anybody could follow and anybody could check you up. And hope to get you back again on an episode, definitely during the season, because we have 23 races apparently. And
I know.
Yeah, I mean, he's targeting 30 for God's sake.
Exactly. We got a lot to talk about, and we'll get you on the DRS Zone too, obviously here sooner or later. And let's, you know what, maybe the next episode just completely make it not as much as maybe an F1 venting session, but what needs to really be said about F1. How about that?
Yeah, that'll be great, actually, to be honest, because I'm a very no filter attached for me, so I will be keeping it very real. I'm a person like that, so would love to come over and keep it real on your episode. And I'm keeping it fingers crossed. Can't wait to hear that coming up episode on your podcast as well. And as usual, thank you so much, RJ, for coming for the episode as well.
Yeah, thank you so much again. Take care, and I'm sure we'll chat sooner or later.
All right then. When something comes to an end, there's always a new beginning. So this is not the end of this episode. I mean, this is the end of this episode, but it's a new beginning for another episode. So hold on to that and tune in with us, and do download our episodes and do download our series and subscribe to us. We are streaming on Apple, Spotify, and Google Podcasts as well. And you can always contact us, send us your thoughts, opinions, feedbacks, negative, positive, criticism. We welcome everything that you say. It holds such a value for us, because you are the backbone of these podcasts. So on Twitter, you can drop us a DM or a tweet under @AMGDance or @Jorgina Donna. It's the same for Instagram as well if you're not a Twitter user. And until next time, this is me, Jorgina Donna, signing off with a promise that we will be coming with another amazing episode with another amazing guest. So until then, peace out. And and remind me not to say and all the time. So until next time, until next episode, take care. Bye bye. Love you guys.